Okay, I have the intake gaskets on. If you look, I tried to center the holes up where the bolts go straight in. This right here that you see the red is from the Hi-Tac. Belly pans in, RTV across the back and the front, and this is what a Edelbrock calls for in their house brand, but the Permatex is the same stuff. Now the big thing getting the intake on here is I have to get the water passage into the intake, but you want to set the intake down flat into the Permatex, which I'm letting it set up a little bit too to make it a little harder, that way it doesn't squish out as bad. They have recommendations on the Permatex bottle for how long to let it sit. So I'm going to let that go, and then we'll get the intake set on. And I'm going to figure out how I can get it in here without messing up my RTV at both ends. Okay, I went back and read. It only says after you get the intake on to hand tighten the bolts till the RTV starts squeezing out. And then let it sit for an hour after that before you do final torque. And as you can tell, this thing is not light. And it's already made one of my intake gaskets, so let me come up with a better way to do this. Okay, I ended up getting a piece of coil roll and laying across the head. And I'm going to pull that out of my way. And set the intake down. And if everything's right, I should be able just to start these. Well, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to need some shorter bolts. So I can go ahead and put the front one and the back one in. And even with the precautions, the intake gasket's ended up off. I'm gonna cut you off and I'll come back when I'm got another step to show you. Okay, we're back again. Last night after I cut off, I went ahead and made the fuel line up. I also put some of the high tack on the back side of the copper gaskets, and then just run the bolts in to hold the gasket in place. That should make it easier to get the valve covers on and to get it to not leak. So now we're going to put in the rocker studs and get the rocker arms and push rods on. Okay, here's the rocker studs. Edelbrock, suggest using these. You can use the stock ones. I just say it solves some of the other issues. They do recommend that you use blue Loctite, number 242. Instead of buying the liquid this time, I just bought the gel. Give it a try, see if it's not as messy. And you just turn this dial and your Loctite will come up. Okay, never shown you that. We get around here. You can see I've already put 2 of them in. Haven't run them down all the way. I'm just getting them started right now. And in the instructions it says on this part, just run them down hand tight. Now on these there's you can put an Allen screw in them. I'm just using this one because it's easier to grab a hold of than trying to do it by hand. I'm still doing it by hand. It's just easier to get a hold of this part than it is to do it by the stud itself. Now I'll go back around and I'll clean this extra blue Loctite out. Don't want it floating around in the engine. Definitely want to clean it around this one. That's where the oil comes up and around it into the rocker shaft. Okay, here's where it comes important. I'm marking which push rod goes where. I'm pulling these out of the side that I have marked driver and in order. 1, this is number 2, number 3, you guys get the idea. I'll bring you back when I got to put the rocker shaft on. Okay, got that done. Now I'm back with the rocker shaft. Remember I said it's going to keep it size specific. And the way I could tell is I'll put them in the valve cover. The oil fill goes on the driver's side. So that's the way I've got it set up. Put the oil deflector in. And next we'll be putting the rocker shaft in place. Okay, let me get a little something to help. Okay, I got a semi-lube on all the washers, the threads, and the bottom side of the nut. I said these torque to 35 foot-pounds, so right now what I'm doing is just going to run them down, grab a nut, till they're touching. These 12-point bolt or nuts. So I'm going to do this in 3 steps. Doesn't say you have to. I'm going to start out at 10 foot-pounds after I have another sip of coffee. We'll start in the middle. You see, I didn't even reach 10. And I started in the middle that way. Okay, that one finally hit 10. 10, 10, and 10. So I went up to 20 for the next one. And now we're going to go to 35. Okay, and we're at 35. And just want to go back and check and make sure that tightening the other ones didn't change the pull on the rest of them. So now I'm going to catch it back off and do the other side. Okay, you got the rocker shafts down. I've already put the passenger side valve cover on. Putting the high-tech on the cork gasket and then putting it on the head and the intake made a world of difference. I didn't have to fight trying to line up the bolt holes. Hopefully it's going to make a better job sealing. Now when you go to tighten up the bolts for the valve cover gasket, is there anything else on a motor? It's got a torque spec. I recommend you get a service manual for the vehicle you're working on. And this one, on the valve covers in the chart, it calls for 3 to 5 foot-pounds. Well, none of my torque, my 3/8 and my 1/2 inch won't go down to 5 foot-pounds accurately. Well, it'd be accurate, but it'd be hard to tell. My 3/8 starts at 10, and like I said, my 1/2 inch earlier starts at 50. So I've got an inch pounding. Well, it's easy to convert foot-pounds to inch pounds because we know 12 inches equals a foot. So multiply this number times 12. So I wanted anywhere from 36 to 60 foot-pounds, or inch-pounds, I'm sorry. So I've got the torque wrench set at 50. And the reason you want to do this is if you over-torque it, it's going to push the gasket out and it's not going to seal like it should. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I hate oil leaks. That just doesn't feel like it's tightening like it should, or not torquing like it should. Yeah, these torques so light you won't even, unless you're really paying attention, you won't be able to tell when they torque. See right there. And I probably over torqued that one and over torqued that one. So let me back those two off and retorque them. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot to have them torqued to 50 inch-pounds, or just a little over 4 foot-pounds. I think I'm going to go ahead and roll this up another 10 and go ahead and just torque them to 60. Which isn't much more, but okay. At this point, of course, I have the other valve cover to put on, thermostat to be put in, thermostat housing. Got to tighten up these clamps. Coolant return. I've got to tighten both of these up, and I've got to put the throttle linkage on. I'll be in, well, didn't tighten it up all the way. This I'll be pulling off. I'm going to fire up the low pressure pump and run it through the system to get any trash out of it that I can before I run it. Trash will clog up your fuel injector, so another reason to keep them changed. And other than a little bit of wiring and what I just mentioned, this is almost complete.